You make me wear my bike helmet. Taught me never to run with scissors.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
And to follow the swimming rules.
You're always looking out for me and trying to keep me safe.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
Here in the garage.
Closet.
Sugar box under the bed. Where anyone can get to it.
How safe is that?
How safe is that?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. If you own a firearm and are not using it, please be responsible and be sure that it's stored in a safe place. Remember, always lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org.
Parkinson's disease is a neurological movement disorder affecting an estimated 1 million Americans, including many under age 40. The American Parkinson Disease Association is the largest grassroots network in the United States, working to help ease the burden and find the cure for those coping with Parkinson's. Visit apdaoptimism.org today to find out how you can help millions live with dignity and optimism. Your action today will help APDA put an end to Parkinson's disease.
Hello, I'm State Representative Charlie Collins, and you're watching Fayetteville Public Access Television.
Hi, with me today are Melissa Terry and Bill Reagan. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
Fine. Now, we're going to talk today about situations developing with Willow Heights community in Fayetteville. Mm-hmm. It's up by the Confederate Cemetery.
That's right.
And there are some plans, I guess, to sort of not have people live at Willow Heights anymore, or not have the present occupants live there anymore.
That's correct.
Now, how did that come about?
Well, that in and of itself is the question that launched this whole conversation.
Yeah.
Because I live in South Fayetteville. Mr. Reagan lives in South Fayetteville. But it wasn't until April of this year that I was even aware of the pending sale of
Right.
Willow Heights. We had heard some talk that maybe that was happening, but we didn't really know anything more than that.
Now, this would be the Fayetteville Housing Authority going to sell
Yes.
the? Okay.
Yes, so the Fayetteville Housing Authority is the steward for all public housing in
Right.
Fayetteville, and they have 4 properties. One is Willow Heights,
Right.
which is on Willow Avenue on the southwest side of Mount Sequoia. The other is Morgan Manor, which is at the south end of Wood and Washington by 15th Street, and the Lewis Complex, which is over on Stone Street by Ramey Junior High, and then Hillcrest Tower
Right.
up on the square. So apparently they were approached by a private developer and with an offer to purchase Willow Heights, and they negotiated a little bit and accepted his offer. And then the next proposal is to build additional units, 58 additional units at Morgan Manor, the southern other property, and remove the current residents from Willow Heights. So it's basically like an economic displacement.
Now, when they put this up, did they put this up for bid, or did they just talk to one person?
Now, it's part of what there are 3 problematic things for me with the current issue as it is, and one is the lack of due process and
Right.
transparency. So when you're a private resident and you want to sell your house or your property or
Yeah.
whatever, then they're how you choose to go about that is your business.
Right.
However, there's a social contract and a public trust involved in the management of public property.
Yeah.
And so even if you don't feel that you are required by law to get bids or
Right.
to have an independent
Yeah.
realtor, to be an ethical steward of the public trust, wouldn't you want to?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just to be able to say with confidence and transparency, like, deciding to sell Willow Heights is a really huge decision, and here's how you know.
It's been there a long time.
Yeah, and so as a housing authority board member, I would feel really compelled to have as much evidence as possible
Yeah.
to demonstrate that we put a lot of thought into it, and here's how you know. Here's our paper trail, here's the bids we got, all that stuff, but they don't exist.
Now, someone's going to ask, why are you both concerned about this?
Well, I'm concerned, just as a community resident, there's a couple of different engagement points for me in this conversation, just as a community resident, because the city of Fayetteville, we really pride ourselves on equality and fairness and justice, and it's something that distinguishes us from some other communities around the
Yeah.
state. And you know, we're consistently ranked on these top 10 lists for inclusivity and all that stuff. And so part of it's just that ethic, you
Right.
know. And then the other piece of it is that I teach at Washington Elementary, which is the closest neighborhood school.
Yeah.
Run the school garden and do some different kinds of public health education. And so we know these kids. We have about 20 kids that live at Willow Heights, and we know their families. And a lot of times, very low income people don't either have the confidence or feel like they know the way to approach.
Be able to navigate the system.
Navigate the system,
Right.
or that they have a voice.
Yeah.
And so part of that, you know, when we started realizing what was going on, one of our very first things that we did was to go door to door and conduct surveys so that we could actually gather those voices together.
And what sort of survey was this?
It was just a 10-question
Yeah.
survey that we put together. I'm a graduate student in the political science program at the university.
And you're a farmer?
And I'm a farmer.
Right.
This is and a generational, like Bill grew up in this neighborhood, et cetera. And so, so when we realized that, you know, back to your original question about the bid, there's 3 things that are really troublesome
Yeah.
about this whole proposal. One is the first question of, why can we not revitalize Willow Heights? Why do we have to
That's
sell
a big
it?
question.
And why do we have
Yeah.
to sell it? And especially that the city's top goal in the 2030 plan is revitalization and infill. So why are these so out of step and out of harmony with our community goals?
We can't just be revitalizing the pretty areas.
Right.
Right.
Well, and if
Yeah.
they're going to be goals, if they're the city goals, then they have to be the goals for everybody.
Exactly.
And so, so that was the first question to the board of why can't we revitalize it? And so the answer was not satisfactory. They basically, like, the only thing that we were hearing back was that it's impossible, it's too expensive, it's whatnot. And so, again, there was a lack of data of, like, well, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Did you get an estimate?
Right.
And they said they didn't. So that's troublesome. And then if the decision is to sell it rather than to revitalize it, the lack of going out for bid, like, how do we know that you got the best value for this
Exactly.
property? $1.25 million for 5.5 acres on the south side of Mount Sequoia with amazing views is, I'm feeling pretty confident, under market value.
Somebody's making out like a bandit.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So, and then the third piece of, you know, the thing that really sealed the deal for me is that at that April board meeting, when we went to just kind of put an ear to the process, is what do the residents think?
Right.
You know, and so they were basically like, oh, they love it. Those people just want new refrigerators and air conditioners. And I'm like, well, we call them our neighbors.
Yeah, I
not
never
those
trust anybody who
people.
says those people.
But where's your evidence
Yeah.
that that's what they want? You know, did you have a public meeting? Did you take a survey? What did you do? How do you know that?
Right.
And so none of that data also none of that existed.
Yeah.
So like some really unsubstantiated claims were being made that just lacked evidence, and that's not how you do science. You know, you have to have data. And so I know how to do a survey, you know, just based on my academic training. And then I called a peer and a professor in another department to help me ground truth some of the questions and figure out the right sequence and check my own biases in the way that you word questions.
Right.
You know, because if you don't have a peer review, then the way that you ask the questions can often trigger the response that you're trying to solicit, right? So you ethically, you need to check that before you start out. So we did that. And then we got, you know, it was like 4 moms went up there and went door to door, and we did it. And so that's where we learned a lot from the residents about that the majority want to stay, that they appreciate the fact that it's really beautiful just like anybody else, but that also that what we would consider, you know, somebody who's in a more affluent income bracket would consider an amenity of being able to walk to the farmer's market, or it's a necessity for people who lack transportation.
And they can walk to the library too.
Library, the grocery store, school.
Right.
We have families that walk their kids to Washington, which is awesome, and a SNAP supportive farmer's market.
Well, what were some of the sample questions that you asked?
Well, I wish I had thought to bring a copy of the actual survey with me, but so we just started out quantitative.
Yeah.
You know, one of the recommendations was to make the survey anonymous, so that folks felt comfortable that there would be no retribution, because very low income people are often, you know, they feel vulnerable. And so part of that was just saying that, like, we're not here to collect any of your personal information, just your opinion.
Right.
You know, and so we started out with just like, how long have you lived here? Do you have any kids that live here? If so, how many?
Yeah.
And then the first qualitative question that we asked was, what is your favorite thing about the neighborhood? You know, and so that was, again, the beauty and the walkable resources. And then we asked, would you rather stay at Willow Heights and fix it up, or would you rather move to Morgan Manor to new apartments? And the majority, 13 out of 15, said that they would rather stay and fix it up. So, and then, you know, another question further down the survey was, has the Fayetteville Housing Authority asked your opinion about whether you would like to stay or move? And the unanimous answer was no. They have not asked their opinion. They have been told this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we've come to find out now that the buyer, potential buyer of Willow Heights, has a representative that's going around, going door to door, and not ethically representing who they are or what their agenda is, and trying to get the residents to sign a petition saying that they want to live in new apartments. And so, again, it's just, you know, it's unscrupulous behavior to support a poorly documented process. Let's say.
Well put.
Yeah.
So. I would think the developer having a petition, sending a petition like that around would be grounds for knocking their bid out of the water.
You would think.
Yeah.
It'd be fairly damning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the only reason I know that it's happening is because we ran into their petition gatherer, and she would not let us read what it is that they're saying to the residents.
See, that's a bad sign right there.
So I have no idea, what they're saying.
Speaking of knocking their bid out of the water, Fayetteville Mayor Lionel Jordan recently withdrew his support for the project.
That's correct.
Now, why was that?
Do you want to speak to that?
I think you've got that right there in the letter, don't you?
Well, essentially,
you're doing a great job.
Essentially, the way that this proposal was presented to the city was that the Fayetteville Housing Authority was proposing to build 58 new units at Morgan Manor, which is the property that they own in South Fayetteville.
Yeah.
So what was not disclosed at the time is that, and this is problematic with public housing transactions all across the country, is that without a pretty focused sense of scrutiny,
Right.
that there are a lot of folks who are making a lot of money inside these tax credit applications.
Yeah.
And so what was not conveyed to the city is that inside this application package, which is 874 pages long, P.S., that's crazy, what we saw was that the Fayetteville Housing Authority is not going, if this proposal goes through, the Fayetteville Housing Authority will not even be the owner of the buildings.
Really?
99.99% of the property will be held by what's called the syndicator, or the company, Tax Credit LLC out of Ohio.
I like a syndicator because it reminds you of syndicate.
Yes, so they are syndicator, and they will be holding $5.3 million in tax credits for 15 years and 1 month, at the end of which time then they will have extracted pretty much all the value out of the property, and they will convey full ownership back to the housing authority.
Well, that's awfully nice of them.
Yeah, so a depreciated housing stock with no, they basically sold one asset to finance this asset is the way that the proposal is going right now. So the proposal is to sell Willow Heights, this prime property, beautiful location, concentrate the residents all together on one property, which is a whole nother problem of concentrating poverty.
Exactly.
And then not retain ownership of the thing that they just liquidated an asset to accomplish.
That's a big deal, too, concentrating poverty in one area.
That's a terrible idea.
I mean, I remember meetings in Fayetteville where they talked about having people spread all over the place. And if you put all the people in one area, well, I mean, you're stigmatizing them.
Absolutely. Well, that, and you're creating an ecosystem that is based on people with very limited resources.
Exactly.
And especially in the context of South Fayetteville, it is an up-and-coming neighborhood, but there's no walkable grocery store.
No.
They can't walk to school.
No.
You know, I mean, so it's just like they're basically, the proposal as is to me, just to back up for a second, to me, like the difference between being low income and being poor is very distinct.
Right.
Like a low income person is somebody who just doesn't have money.
Right.
But they can be wealthy in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a quantitative word. But poor is a qualitative word, which means that you don't have access to money or resources.
Yeah.
Or whatever the resources that you primarily need.
Right.
Right? So if we have our low-income residents at Willow Heights rich in resources that they can, they're walkable resources, the store and the library and all those things that we've just listed, and then we remove them from a pretty healthy social ecosystem and put them further away from those resources.
So you're shoving them further down on the poverty level.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is not the intention of HUD or the American people or taxpayers.
Right.
Like, this is not the way that these funds are intended to be used.
Yeah.
And certainly not our community.
Yeah.
Doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Let alone a progressive city like
Fayetteville. Exactly.
Arkansas says it is.
Yeah.
And then we want to go back and start all over.
No.
With public housing when it initially started. Hey, let's cram everybody in these high rises and let's concentrate everybody here. You don't do that. It doesn't work, and we got to think of a better way.
Well, the mind boggles and the stomach churns at just the very concept of that.
Yes, sir.
Well, the thing is, too, is that, we were kind of talking about this before we got started, is that just to acknowledge the need, and there is a need to upgrade the facilities, like the conditions that our neighbors at Willow Heights are living in.
Yeah.
Did not happen overnight.
Right.
One hand. And the Fayetteville Housing Authority has the responsibility to manage those properties. So for whatever reason, they have not been managed correctly. And creating this pressure point of deprivation is something that's highly preventable in a community like this. And so I reject the notion that this decision has to be made because of scarcity of resources.
Yeah, it's what you'd expect in other communities we won't name.
Right.
But not in Fayetteville.
Well, and so this a marked lack of curiosity about what other cities are doing is what stands out to me. So, for example, the city of Austin, which is one of our regional aspirational cities, it's named in our regional plan. The city of Austin is doing some killer stuff with their public housing. And so this is not a unique conversation to Fayetteville, because our public housing stock is about the same age across the country. So we have some really great examples from peer communities about what else we could do besides this. And like to Mr. Riggins' point, this notion of concentrating poverty and shoving all the people in one spot is like totally 1985 or something. Like, we know better. We know better. I mean, the research is absolutely unflinching when we talk about long-term consequences, about just the multiplier effects that happen when you build these kinds of ecosystems.
I know. Now the developer, you can't find out who his partners are, because they're sort of hiding behind a limited liability corporation.
That's correct.
Yeah. So he could have developers here in Fayetteville working with him.
Well, I'm not sure, because one of the, when I went to the April board meeting just to kind of put an ear to how what was this about, the developer, the potential purchaser, was there, and so I asked him, tell us what you want to do. Well, it's like, sell me on it. Like, what is your plan? And he really wasn't able to answer the question other than, ask him if he was going to build affordable housing. And his response was that basically that he's not a charity. And so I was like, well, then why don't we just leave the public housing there and fix it again? Anyway, he really was not very forthcoming about what it was that he intends to do there. Like, flip the property since he got it so cheap and sell it for twice that, or build $300,000 homes, whatever. He wasn't able to answer.
That will do a lot for South Fayetteville.
Yeah, and so whatever it was, he was unable to answer that question. And so I asked him, I was like, well, how, he basically said he didn't have a business plan. And so I asked him, I was like, how in the world did you get financing, bank financing, for $1.25 million to purchase this land without a business plan? Like, how does that work?
He knows what he wants to do with the
land. And he responded that he doesn't have bank financing. So
he still knows what he wants to do with the land.
Well, I mean all that is probably, but all that's speculative. But just to underscore your point, that the Secretary of State records show that the potential buyer established an LLC in March of this year.
Right.
So that's when the investors corralled their resources.
So you had these meetings with the Fayetteville Housing Authority. How well publicized were they?
Well, they're not, actually. They don't publish their agendas beforehand. So it's like you don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
And we have found it fairly difficult to get information out of the Housing Authority anyway.
It seems to me like their meetings should be held, especially these meetings, should probably be held at Willow Heights.
Well, so that's interesting, because they have monthly board meetings, at City Hall, which are, standard, whatever. But again, if you don't know what they're talking about, it's a very low engagement kind of process, right? Well, so HUD requires that in order to, the word that HUD uses is dispossess a public property, that you have to hold 2 meetings with the affected population, with the tenants. 2 different meetings, and that you have to be able to demonstrate evidence of those meetings. And then in your application, you have to write a summary of what those meetings were about and the conclusions that you drew. So basically, we had to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get that document, so to find where the Housing Authority did or did not comply with that. And so in their response, they cited 2 different meetings, but then when we filed a follow-up FOIA response for evidence of those who attended those meetings.
Right.
And the agendas and the minutes. The short story is we did not get what we asked for. We got a Christmas party sign-in sheet from
A Christmas party sign-in sheet?
from 2013, and it was not at Willow Heights. It was at Hillcrest Towers.
Okay.
So that being the case, it just completely underscores the point that, like, even nobody is trying to throw the Fayetteville Housing Authority under the bus here, but they keep jumping in front of it, you know, and it's just like.
Well, they're jumping in front of the bus and dragging the people from Willow Heights in front of the bus with them.
Well, I mean, there's every reason to be, if you're proud of what you're doing,
yeah,
there's every reason to produce every bit of evidence and documentation that you can. If you're not proud of what you're doing, then you do these lateral moves of obfuscating direct answers, essentially.
I can understand why people in that community themselves might be nervous about coming forward.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there have been some residents that have come to a couple of the meetings once we really, like, you know, geared up the neighborhood participation, and their voices have been super effective.
I've read those articles in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next on the agenda then?
Well, I think the next thing is that as this process moves forward, one of the biggest question marks in this whole equation is that the entire proposal is predicated on the approval of a tax credit application, which will finance Morgan Manor. And that application will be determined by a state commission at the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration in August.
Right.
So it's almost premature for the City Council and Planning Commission to be even deliberating about it until we know what that decision is.
Right.
Because in August, if the application is denied, then we have to start, the Housing Authority has to start all over again.
Right.
Anyway, which is what we want.
Yeah.
And so we're encouraging all of our political leaders and state leaders to deny this particular tax credit application at this time, because we feel like that there are probably other communities who are more prepared and have better substantiating evidence that this is good for their city. What we're advocating for is that we would like to go back to the drawing board and have this discussion in a way that actually reflects Fayetteville's ethics and values and who we are. So, for example, the city's recent mobility study.
Right.
Super visible, lots and lots of ways to engage. You know, and so at the end of the day, whatever the mobility study results are, the city can justifiably be proud of that.
Right.
Because they have done gone above and beyond engaging their citizens. And so I feel like that's the kind of process that we have come to expect, because we see how effective it is. And so we'd like to do that for the whole discussion at Willow Heights, and in general have a conversation about how do we as a city go about diversifying where low-income housing is actually located.
Yeah, and you can't take a steam shovel and just shove people into one area.
Right. Well, and, you know, I mean, like, as our community is growing, we are expecting the same public housing stock to meet the needs of a community that is exponentially grown.
As we're growing, there's going to be more poor people in town.
Well, right. I mean, just because, you know, I mean, like, low-income people are people who are just getting started.
Right.
As teachers, as police officers, as firefighters, as city employees.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, where are folks who don't make $70,000 a year going to live?
Right.
And so that, to me, like, ultimately, in addition to having a community conversation about Willow Heights in particular, I feel like that, you know, sometimes your biggest challenges can also be your biggest lens into seeing something differently. And I feel like what's happening at Willow Heights is a really great opportunity for the community to use that as a lens to talk about, in general, how do we diversify affordable housing in our community? Because what's happening now is we're basically creating a zip code based discrimination,
right,
where housing is all in the 01 zip code.
Yeah.
Affordable housing is all in the 01 zip code in Fayetteville, which then gets tied to school resources,
Yeah.
which then gets, and so again, the research is pretty clear about how to really leverage equality in housing equality in
Right.
a community. It has to touch all the zip codes.
Exactly.
So I think that that's really like the 3 to 5 year picture down the road. Hopefully we would have a more robust view and maybe even a formal master plan that the city could engage in about what are our goals for affordable housing.
I hope so. I mean, this is a problem we've had for a long time, and I think it's something that needs to be. I think maybe this will be the tipping point, and maybe the city will deal with it head on.
I hope so, and this is where all of Fayetteville needs to get involved.
Yeah.
Not just us on the south side.
A lot of people.
When you put a couple 3 heads together,
yeah,
man, you come up with some really good ideas, and you got a lot of folks in this town
who
are willing to do this.
For a lot of people, it's like you put all the poor people together in one place. It's out of sight, out of mind.
That's affordable housing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is about Fayetteville, I mean, of course, everybody probably says about their own community, but we have a lot of talent in our town, and a lot of creative talent and professional talent. And I feel like that, like you said, if we put our heads together, that we could collectively come up with a proposal that we're really proud of, and something that is more in line with just, what we're capable of. Because what the current proposal, as it stands with the Fayetteville Housing Authority, the current proposal, it's basically reflecting desperation and refugee status. And so that's not the case. We have lots of resources. We have the capacity to do this correctly. And what I would call the tyranny of the urgent is not our friend here.
Right.
And that there's a lot to be gained by slowing this whole proposal down and really pulling apart. Social justice lives in the space between decisions, right? And so to really open that decision space way up.
Exactly.
So that we have an opportunity to engage all different kinds of voices.
Well, I hope people start paying attention to this.
I think so. I mean, I feel like that, I live almost exactly in between Willow Heights and Morgan Manor. So I'm a YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, and I love that. We consciously chose to live there. But in walking into this process, I've learned so much more than I knew coming into it. And it's, on the one hand, it's intimidating because it's pretty dang complex. But then on the other hand, it's just, it's like, how often when you drive your car are you concerned about the actual, how your engine works?
Right.
It's a vehicle, right? And so what this conversation is, yes, the engine of affordable housing is really complex, and the mechanisms inside it are really complex, but the concepts and the ethics are common sense.
Exactly.
And they're the vehicle that we need to get in and use that to make the road that we want to go down.
And something as a whole community we need to understand.
And just to have a conversation about it. I don't think that anybody, including myself, has a corner on the market of understanding exactly what all the complexities are or what the opportunities or the answers are. But I do know that as we've all talked about it in our neighborhood and have tried to tease out what actually is going on here, that collectively we're learning a lot together. And that's something I think that can expand, for sure.
Okay, well, Melissa and Bill, I want to thank you both for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. All right, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Register to vote.
You make me wear my bike helmet. Taught me never to run with scissors.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
And to follow the swimming rules.
You're always looking out for me and trying to keep me safe.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
Here in the garage.
Closet.
Shoebox under the bed.
Where anyone can get to it. How safe is that?
How safe is that?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. If you own a firearm and are not using it, please be responsible and be sure that it's stored in a safe place. Remember, always lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org.
Parkinson's disease is a neurological movement disorder affecting an estimated 1 million Americans, including many under age 40. The American Parkinson Disease Association is the largest grassroots network in the United States, working to help ease the burden and find the cure for those coping with Parkinson's. Visit apdaoptimism.org today to find out how you can help millions live with dignity and optimism. Your action today will help APDA put an end to Parkinson's disease.
Hello, I'm State Representative Charlie Collins, and you're watching Fayetteville Public Access Television.
Let's do my first hit single. Okay. I have it on good authority that this sold under 1,000 copies in Canada alone.
Wow, that's great.
Oh, It Takes Time.
Okay.
It takes time to do anything worth doing. Time just to wait and see. Give it time, and it will happen naturally. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a love affair can wait until I understand what this really is. Is this a moment's lust, or beginning of our love? Time will tell, we'll have to wait and see. It takes time to do anything worth doing. Time just to wait and see. Give it time, and it will happen naturally. Slow down, don't you run so fast, you might run right on by the one whose love is built to last. If you take the time to try, it takes time to do anything worth doing. Time just to wait and see. Give it time, and it will happen naturally. It takes time. Time. Give it time. Slow down, don't you run so fast, you might run right on by the one whose love is built to last. If you take the time to try, it takes time to do anything worth doing. Time just to wait and see. Give it time, and it will happen naturally. Time, the one thing we have plenty of. Time, time will heal all your wounds, and after many moons you will find the time is on our side. It takes time to do anything worth doing. Time just to wait and see. Give it time, and it will happen naturally. Time to do anything worth doing. Time takes time, and it will happen naturally.
I was always a sucker for a fade out.
This poem is called Not What I Imagined, and it is for Stephen. I await the spinning of the wheel. This is not what I imagined. This is not what I had planned. I've been saving bottles of peroxide and henna, blue dye and strawberry gold. I wanted our balding gray heads to spout outrageous burps of color, the blooms of gaudy flowers. I wanted to be shocking in my old age, and I wanted you to show me how. You drove by my house last night. I know it was you. I recognized those hot pink tail fins dragging after your Cadillac like Isidora's scarves. You had the radio turned up so loud that the dogs howled and the music ruffled up my sleep. I think it was a funky salsa. I know it was the blues. They said he rocked you like a baby while you were cruising through the void, that you parted them veils as easy as a hot knife parts butter, that you slipped out that door with barely a hidey-do, and that you left him holding shadow when he thought he was holding you. Next month, I bet you'll pop into my dreams. Maybe it'll be the dream where I rob that cowboy in the tight-fitting jeans, or the one where I sprout wings and fly solo over the Sea of Cortez. But there you'll be, grinning like the devil, flirting with my heroes, and I'll know once again that this is not what I imagined. This is not what I had planned. I wanted to be shocking in my old age, and you were supposed to show me how. Thank you.
A player's rundown of the game. Sex is a game. It can be played using highballs and lipstick, handicaps, tip-offs and antes, passes, touchdowns, home runs, fresh powder, strategy, strength, and a good eye. Players are allowed to play indoors, in fields, or in the road. They are not required to stay in bounds. The score is kept, and everyone is a referee. Nobody is benched for missing practice, but all who show for the game should be pumped up, enthusiastic, with a sincere belief that sex is good, clean fun, that sex is not essential like sleep, dreaming, food, or communion.
And if you wanna believe what you believe, you got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you've got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you've got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you've got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you've got to believe. And if you wanna believe what you believe, you got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you want to believe what you believe, you've got to live a life of love. And when the going gets tough, you say you've had enough. That's when you got to believe. And if you want to believe,
black old tires and a pickup truck. Lots of luck, will it start again? Yeah, this old man, he's my old friend. This old man, he loves kids. He thinks pumpkin is really his. With a game of cards staring hard, looking down his nose. There's lots of things that this man knows. Tried to love her, but she wouldn't be true. breaks a man's heart right in two. The day she left him, the sky turned gray, but he got up and worked the very same day. Oh, this old man, he has pain, he rolls it over inside his brain, but the memories come time and time again. Yeah, this old man, he's my old friend. This old man, he works hard all day long till he gets tired, but he never stops thinking much what he's gonna do, and he keeps on thinking till he gets through. This old man, he builds trains and signs his name with a piece of wood, drop it through, sand it down again. Yeah, this old man is my old friend. Yeah, this old man is my old friend.
To support my music habit, I do inspections on federally subsidized housing for low-income families. And most of the time, when I'm working, if there are any 3 or 4-year-old kids in the house, there's almost always one that will want to follow me around and check out what I'm doing. Usually the kid wants to just play junior inspector. Sometimes they're just curious. Sometimes they want to be defender of the household and make sure that I'm not intruding too much on their lives. But once in a while there's a kid that just wants to talk. Just to talk and talk and talk. And you know that kid? Or were you that kid? Or are you still that kid? I don't know how many, maybe 3 summers ago, I was working in a public housing development near downtown Kansas City, and I met a little girl and her doll who just wanted to talk all day. They kind of romped around in my dreams for a couple of months until they made their way into this song. Little black girl living in the projects, little black girl with a ragged old doll. The doll had one arm missing, it hardly had any of its yellow hair at all.
poet. I am a poet. I know this because I bought a license. Had it printed at a copy shop and laminated. Now I carry it with me in case someone asks. It gets me into all kinds of places. I am admitted without question into police stations, the back wards of mental hospitals, the cadaver rooms of funeral homes. Everyone knows all poets are alike in some ways. Poets like to eat cabbage and beans. They handle rodents, steal from the produce counters of grocery stores, and peek into the eyes of the dead, searching out a glimmer of their own fear. Everyone knows poets are given to perversion. Poets like sex upside down from the rear with whips and chains, underwater and in public places. I knew a poet once who did it in a shopping mall. He flashed his poet's license. Everyone knew it was okay. Poets are found in all kinds of places. Their natural habitats are the window ledges of 20-story buildings, center lines of freeways, and circus high-wire acts. Everyone knows trouble follows poets. Their marriages will not take. Lovers die under mysterious circumstances. Their cars get repossessed. They get fired, arrested, picked up, committed, analyzed, and lobotomized more often than the general population. Poets live on the outskirts of credibility in shanty towns surrounded by barbed wire to keep every dayness at bay. They slip on banana peels, tell sick jokes, pick scabs from the huge gaping sores of real-world encounters. Poets stay up all night, smoke and drink too much, shoot heroin each other and themselves. They swim in the blood of their comrades, paying homage to stars that burned themselves out years before they were born. And if you ask poets what they fear most, they'll answer right up without blinking. The thing they fear most is being safe and sane and normal. Given the choice, a poet will choose the path of a speeding bullet, even a speeding train or microbus, over the sanctity of a 50-year death.